Today's sermon title is Serve, Equal, Give. Not everyone is new. That was last Sunday's title. And the kind of love Jesus experienced from Martha and Mary would take anyone by surprise. We all know this story. And if your husband comes home with a dozen of roses, just an ordinary day, you may think that he must have done something wrong, or that he was preparing you for some bad news. But he says, "No, honey, I brought these flowers because I love you, and there's no any other reason. I just love you." Then how would you feel? And this morning, I'm going to preach about living to grow, serve, worship, and share. Most of you spend a lot of time on living together as Christian families in our church and the important relationships that are in our lives, and then we did a growing into God's likeness and how to hang out with Him. Let's focus on the importance of serving God and the others around us. What it really means to serve and why we should serve. So let's dive into the question of what does it really mean to serve? Instead of using the word serve this morning as we talk about it, I want to use the word give, because as I just said, it is the same thing, but yet somehow more challenging in our mind. To help us look at this, we are going to look at John chapter 12, verse 1 to 7, verse by verse. And verse 1, 6 days before the Passover ceremonies began, Jesus arrived in Bethany, the home of Lazarus, the man he had raised from the dead. In verse 2, dinner was prepared in Jesus' honor, and Martha served, and Lazarus was among those who ate with him. Now, this dinner was most likely a celebration that Lazarus was alive. Thus, John's points in bluntly reminding us that Lazarus was at the table with them even after he stated that it was at his house. It also was a very risky move on their part to throw this party because of the religious leaders. You see, they were not happy that Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead because everyone was believing in him, which was kind of the point of why Jesus did miracles, so that people would believe. The religious leaders were so selfish and caught up in their own ideas that a man being brought back to life wouldn't even affect them. So because they were not happy, they had publicly ordered that anyone seeing Jesus must report it immediately so they could arrest him. So Jesus was risking his life on purpose, as we all know, by going to Bethany, where the Passover celebration was going on, because of the amount of people that would be there. Then Simon, Lazarus, Mary, and anyone else who were at the house were risking their lives because they disobeyed the instructions of the religious leaders. Despite these big risks that were boldly being played out at this dinner, let's look at verse 3 to see the boldest move of all in this story. And verse 3, then Mary took a 12-ounce jar of expensive perfume made from essence of nard, and she anointed Jesus' feet with it, and wiping his feet with her hair. The house was filled with fragrance. What an amazing act of love that is displayed here. Picture the scene in your mind. The house is filled with people, and everyone's focus was most likely on Jesus already. Despite that, Mary walks right up in front of everyone and anoints Jesus' feet with expensive nard, which was oil extracted from a plant found in the mountains of India. Because of the rarity of it, even the small amount of that Mary used to cost about a year's wages, according to the Bible. She then wipes Jesus' feet with her hair. Even if there was someone who did not actually see the whole thing happen, everyone now was starting as they caught a whiff of the fragrance. This is an amazing act of service and giving by Mary that we should follow closely. Dear families of the Rosa United Methodist Church, Martha gave her time. Verse 2 told us that Martha was serving at the dinner. She was spending her time getting the meal prepared and on the table so that everyone could celebrate. This would not have been as easy a task as one might think. It's not like she just turned the stove on and threw on some food and set the timer. This would have most likely been a long process of mixing and cutting and kneading and cooking as she prepared. It would have been quite a sacrifice of a time. However, Mary gave her resources. It is amazing to think that Mary gave something so valuable to Jesus, a year's wage worth. Not to mention, if added in the food and materials Martha had probably already used for the dinner, it would be much more. Can you imagine giving everything you made in a year to God? For New Canaan, the yearly family's income average is $150,748. Could you imagine just dumping that kind of money away onto some guy's feet? But yet, here is Mary doing just that. She realized that no amount of money or resource that she could have was worth more than Jesus Christ. She also realized that it was solely God's blessing in her life that she had it in the first place. Thus, she simply gave back to God what was His to begin with. There is a very important lesson from her. Mary gave her life. And Mary's act of washing Jesus' feet with expensive perfume was communicating her love and commitment to Jesus as God's Son. As you will see in the following chapter, Jesus washes the feet of His disciples, telling them that they should follow His example and serve one another. The cleaning of feet was a nasty job, and due to all the walking they did, and typically was done by the slaves or servant in the house. And Mary willingly gives her life to Christ and cleaning His feet and symbolically saying, I will serve you forever. All three of these areas, our time, our resources, our life, are all things we should be giving to God in humble service. But yet, it is so difficult to do so. Oftentimes, instead of having a servant heart like Mary, we have an attitude like Judas that is shown in verse 4 to 6. So let's look at the verse 4. But Judas Iscariot, the disciple who would soon betray him, said, in verse 5, that perfume was worth a small fortune. It should have been sold and the money given to the poor. In verse 6, not that he cared for the poor. He was a thief who was in charge of the disciples' fund, and he often took some of his own use. Excuse. We all have them when it comes to the area of giving and serving. And really, they are just like Judas. where we are simply just being selfish and want our time, resources, or life for us. We have this attitude of, it's mine and I'm going to do with it what I want. Maybe our excuses don't seem that blatantly selfish, but if you take the time to really explore your excuse, selfishness is there. If you dig even deeper, selfishness really comes into play solely because we don't trust God to take care of us, and we need to take care of ourselves. We don't give our time because we think we don't have any time to give, but in reality, we choose where our priorities are and how to spend our time. We don't give money or resources because we need it to live, and God cannot provide more and make it last longer. We don't give our lives because we need to have fun, and the life following Jesus is anything but costly. And really, our giving really reflects our love and trust in God. That's what it comes down to. I love the way Paul was it in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 8. As he talks to the Corinth church about giving, I am not commanding you to give, but I am testing how genuine your love is. It is really hard to have an attitude like Mary, and not like Judas, but it is well worth it in the long run, even though it might seem like a waste initially. Most important, all of this is why we give. Why did Martha give a time to Jesus and his work? Why did Mary give her expensive resources? Why did she humbly give her life to Jesus as a lifelong servant? That answer is found in Jesus' rebuke of Judas, found in verse 7. And verse 7, Jesus replied, "Leave her alone. She did it in preparation for my burial." Mary knew that Jesus was going to die, and she anointed him with oil to show her love and understanding. She knew this for 3 reasons. Number 1, Jesus had given his time to her and many others, teaching them the ways of God and revealing to them that he was the Messiah, God's Son, who had come to save the world. And number 2, Jesus, being fully God, gave of his resources, as the entire world could have been his as he reigned in heaven. But instead, he entrusted the world and everything in it to the people living there, so they were taken care of. And number 3, Jesus gave his life up on the cross, and Mary knew that it was in her place that Jesus was nailed to the cross. Dear families of God, Jesus gave everything for us so that we might have life in general and all the little things that come with it. Without Jesus giving, we would have nothing but death, a one-way ticket to hell, and eternal separation from God. Instead, because Jesus gave everything, we too have been given a choice to give as well. We can have an attitude like Mary and give everything we have to God and to others around us and look forward to the blessings to come in heaven. Or we can have an attitude like Judas, choosing to keep everything for ourselves and staying far away from God and ending up with nothing in the long run. God forbid that we should ever believe that just because one person was blessed through their open giving of gifts, then everyone will be blessed the same. Let God be your guide. Mary broke the worth of $150,000 of value and gave it to Jesus, which is an extreme amount of money for someone in her financial conditions. But not only did she wipe Jesus' feet with the ointment, but she broke the box, signifying that she was ready and willing to give all that she had to please the man of God. I'm not saying that it is necessary for anyone to give all that they have right now to be blessed. I am simply making it plain to the people of God that we have to always be willing and ready to receive from God. There are many churches in America today whose primary motive is to receive gifts or money from their members. Their church is cursed and will never have enough. However, there are other churches which leave the doors open for anyone to give anyhow God leads them, whether it be big or small. These churches receive greatly from their members. Which church are we belong to? How are you going to serve your God? What kind of resources can you give to God? May God continue to bless you and keep you. And amen.